Okay, this is chapter 5. Let's do some review. This unit is, or this chapter is on verbs, but let's do a little bit of review here. You've already learned present tense personal endings, and they are of course ost, mustis, unt. You've also learned the imperfect tense, and it is bombas bot. Here we go. Bombas bot, bombas batis bont. And here is how you conjugate first conjugation verbs. Remember, there are 4 principal parts for every verb or most verbs. And here's an example of a first conjugation verb, laudo, laudari, laudavi, laudatum. Recognize that in the second principal part, there is a long A. That is the characteristic of first conjugation verbs. L-A-U-D-A, long A, R-E. That long mark, that line over the A, demonstrates that it's a long vowel, and that line is called a macron, M-A-C-R-O-N, macron. And that shows you that it's a first conjugation verb. So we find the stem simply by dropping the R-E off of that second principal part, and that leaves us with lauda, L-A-U-D-A, and of course you add that to your endings. And so here's what the imperfect looks like. Laudabam, laudabas, laudabat, laudabamus. There we go. Laudabatus, laudabant. So chapter 1 dealt with first conjugating. Let me take a step back here. Conjugating first conjugation verbs in the present tense. This one we're looking at imperfect and future. Again, this should be review for you anyway. Laudabam, laudabas, laudabat, laudabamus, laudabatus, laudabant. You add those endings to the stem, and that's how you conjugate it. What about translating? In the imperfect tense, here's how you translate. I was praising, you were praising, he, she, it was praising, we were praising, you all were praising, and they were praising. So this is action that's happening in the past, but we call it imperfect because it's not complete. The word perfect means complete action. We'll talk about complete action later. That's the perfect tense. This is imperfect. It's incomplete. So it's happening in the past, but it is ongoing in the past. I was praising. It was ongoing. You were praising, etc. All right. Let's see here. Now, there are additional ways you can translate this. You could also say, for laudabam, I was praising. You could also say, I kept on praising, or I used to praise. And specifically, if like there's an adverb sype with it, you could have a variation and say, I kept on praising, or I used to praise. You get the idea. I won't go through all of them there. Same thing for laudabamus and laudabatis, laudabant. We were praising, we kept on praising, we used to praise. So I'll let that run through there. Now, one other way that the imperfect can be translated is what we call the simple past. And again, this is where if you have the adverb sype with it, you could say, I often praised. It almost looks like it's the perfect tense, but the idea of often means that it happened frequently, so it was ongoing. So I often praised. If you see sype with laudabam, you could say I often praised. All right, so we're looking at the exact same thing, but for second conjugation verbs. Here, monoo is an example of what second conjugation verbs look like, and the characteristic vowel is the long E in the second principal part. Look at that second principal part, M-O-N-E, long E with the macron over it, R-E, moneri. That tells you, that long E tells you it is a second conjugation verb, and you conjugate it exactly the same way you conjugate the first conjugation. You take that stem, M-O-N-E, and you add your endings bombas, bot, bamus, batis, bont. So you end up with monobam, monobas, monobat, monobamus, monobatis, monobant. All right? And here's a translation just like in the first conjugation, but this word means warn. So it's I was warning, you were warning, he was warning, we were warning, you all were warning, and they were warning. And by extension, you could also, again, translate it this way. Oh, sorry, I got to do the plural. I was warning, I kept on warning, I used to warn, etc. There we go. Those additional ways you can translate it. I was warning, I kept on warning, I used to warn. And here it is in the plural. Monobamus, we were warning, we kept on warning, we used to warn. that through. All right. And of course, if you have these adverbs sype with it, sype monobant would be they often warned. Again, ongoing action in the past. All right, what about future tense? Again, this is a review for you. Future tense, you add, here are your endings, bo, bis, bit, bimis, bitis, bunt. You should know these by now. And you're going to add these to your same stem. So again, the example of laudo, laudari, you add lauda to the stems. Bo, bis, bit, bimis, bitis, bunt. So you end up with lauda bo, lauda bis, lauda bit, lauda bimis, lauda bitis, and lauda bunt. Bo, bis, bit, bimis, bitis, bunt. There are your future tense endings added to the stem lauda. And translation here for future tense is I will warn, you will warn, excuse me, I'm praising now, sorry. I will praise, you will praise, he will praise, we will praise, you all will praise, they will praise. And then the word monao, which is the word for warn, with the future tense is monabo, monabis, monabit, monabimus, monabitus, monabunt. There you go. And this is I will warn, you will warn. Here it comes. There you go. I will warn, you will warn, he, she, it will warn, we will warn, you all or y'all will warn, and they will warn. So that's conjugating and first, second conjugation verbs. You should know this by now, because again, this is pretty much review from last year. This is the section that's probably going to be newer for you. So let's take a look at this. This is very similar to what we looked at yesterday in chapter 4, that there are some nouns that end, some second declension nouns that end in er. We looked at puer yesterday and ager, the words for sun and field. They end in er. And when you decline them, sometimes they keep that e and sometimes they drop it. Well, the exact same thing happens with some adjectives. There are a few adjectives that in the nominative case, they end in er. And so let's take a look at a couple of these examples. Okay, so here's a couple of examples here. We have liber, libera, liberum. This is an adjective that means free. Notice that there is an e in all three forms, masculine, feminine, and neuter, nominative singular. Liber, libera, liberum. Then we have next to that, pulcher, pulcra, pulcrum. This is an adjective that means beautiful. And if you'll notice, liber, liber, liberum, it keeps the e all the way down. Look at that. There's an e all the way in masculine, feminine, and neuter. So it's liber, liberi, libero, liberum, etc. In the feminine, it's libera, liberi, liberi, libera, etc. Neutered, liberum, liberi, libero, liberum, etc. So there's an e throughout the declension of this word. So it keeps the e. But look at pulcher, pulcra, pulcrum. There is only an e in the nominative masculine singular, not in the feminine or neuter nominative singular. And when you decline pulcher in the masculine, the e drops out. It loses the e. So you have pulcri, pulcro, pulcrum, pulcro. Now, of course, the vocative, it's going to match the masculine, so the masculine nominative, so it's pulcher. That e pops back in the vocative singular, but it loses it again for the rest of the plural. Pulcri, pulcorum, can't speak right. I think I actually left, there's a typo there that should actually say pulchrorum, Pulchrorum, that got deleted. Pulcris, pulcros, pulcris, pulcri. And so masculine, feminine, and neuter, pretty much it loses the e all the way throughout, except for that one example there. So some adjectives ending in er keep the e, and some adjectives end in er lose the e. And you can tell the difference because if it has an er in the masculine, feminine, and neuter, it's going to keep the e. If it doesn't have it in masculine, feminine, and neuter, it's going to drop the e. So that's the entire chapter, chapter 5. Go ahead and do the worksheet. If you feel comfortable doing with that, when you're done, take the quiz and get going.